Day, 10:30 to 11, when I'll talk to local and regional authors. So please join me Wednesdays here on 90.9 FM KSJE Farmington.
KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them. Whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury, San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. "11 minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Thursday morning, September 10th. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Micklin, and thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, 103.3 FM over the air in the Durango, Colorado area, and of course streaming everywhere from our website, KSJE.com. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program, streaming live to the KSJE YouTube channel and Facebook page. We are glad that you're with us this morning, everybody. Coming up today, my conversation with San Juan County. County Manager Mike Stark is standing by, and Commissioner Jim Crowley is here to talk about a proposed gross receipts tax increase in San Juan County. It's a big issue. We'll be talking about it, sharing some numbers and some reasoning behind this request for an increase. That's starting in the next few moments right here on KSJE. So stay tuned for that. Next hour, it's our local information program about the coronavirus, COVID-19. Megan Cullip will be joining me here in Studio A, and this morning we're going to talk to Dr. Paul Davis from the San Juan Regional Spine Center. He'll be talking a bit about the report this week of a vaccine for the coronavirus that's kind of been put on hold because of impacts to the spinal column in some of the patients that have been getting that and testing that vaccine. We'll talk more about that this morning at 9 a.m. on YouTube and Facebook. Of course, a rebroadcast on the radio this afternoon at 5:06, so you can hear it on the radio as well. On the radio at 9, Mick Hess is taking us roving with the arts. It's our classical music program. This morning, Mick is featuring music from three great composers, Ravel, Schumann, and Chopin, coming up this morning on Roving with the Arts at 9:06. We invite you, of course, to connect with us also on Twitter and on Instagram, in addition to YouTube and Facebook. And let's check our improving weather forecast. Today, we're expecting maybe some partly sunny skies. Still a chance of some scattered showers, though, today. The high 61 in Farmington, so that's warmer than we've seen the last couple of days. 42 and clearing overnight. Mostly sunny tomorrow with a high of 71 on Friday, warming up on Saturday to 77. Lower 80s for Sunday, Monday, and mid-80s Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. Overnight lows, though, of course, still right around 50 degrees. Well, let me introduce my guests who are here with me this morning, again from San Juan County, to talk a little bit about the County Commission. Commissioner Jim Crowley is here from District 3. Commissioner, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, Mike Stark is here, County Manager. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Scott.
Thank you both for coming in this morning to talk about this really important issue and maybe how we got here, too. The Commission has planned to ask for a gross receipts tax increase. That's going to be voted on next Tuesday. And so, Mike Stark, let's start with you a little bit about maybe what gets us here. This is kind of all related to the pandemic and COVID-19. Is that correct?
Well, it is. That's what's tipped us over the edge. But prior to, we've been dealing with some of the historical challenges going back to the financial crisis that hit, and more importantly for us, it was more of a natural gas basin crisis that ultimately resulted that we've been dealing with for the last 10 years. And so through time, we've been trying to manage the county within the revenues that have coming in, just as any good business would do, or any resident would do with their household budget, and we've been able to maintain the same level of services and the number of services that we offered prior to starting to see the decline, and so that's been done through attrition of employees. We had 50 employees that we had been able to reduce our workforce by since 2010, and of course operating expenses to go with that. And like I said, the key is we've been able to do that and still maintain the same services and level of services to the citizens. But gross receipts tax, which is on the table for Tuesday, is the county's primary source of revenue to fund county government operations. And what's really tipped the scales for us is we were on a decline because of some of the economic challenges that we've been seeing, specifically since 2015. And then now COVID hits, and it's a whole new challenge for us. Since FY 2016, we're down 28% in gross receipts tax revenue, and that's compared to our FY 21 budget. And so when COVID hit, all of a sudden we started to see, and of course reporting for gross receipts is 2 months in arrears, so we don't get to see March activity until May.
Right.
And so we were cautiously waiting what those numbers would look like while we were already making cuts. Starting March 1st, knowing where things were heading, the potential of lost revenue, we were able, with the collective effort of our department heads and elected officials, to freeze another 27 positions immediately, which resulted in savings of $1.5 million. But then revenues came in for March activity, and we were down 16% in gross receipts tax. And so that's the number that we've been managing through, and it stayed fairly consistent as we start to see the revenues flowing in month after month. That's what our FY21 budget is based on, is gross receipts tax is being down that percentage. And so what that ended up leaving for a gap for FY21 was $6.6 million. The good news is that because we have county commission, county management across the board that are really focused on managing the operations, making sure that we're not spending excessively, we had cash reserves that were able to balance the budget for fiscal year 21. That's the current fiscal year that we're in that runs through June 30th.
Okay.
$4 million of that $6.6 million gap was covered through cash reserves and other savings, but they're one-time, maybe 1.5 year type situations where we can count on those in future years. And so
I was going to say, you can't keep going back to that savings account, if you will, for multiple years. That just won't last.
Yeah, so that's the dilemma that we're in, and I appreciate the commission and applaud them for wanting to take this issue up well in advance of the start of next fiscal year. And that's really what we're talking about, is getting prepared for FY22, assuming that we don't have revenues fall further off the cliff than we're already estimating. Oil and gas production and equipment, another big source of revenue for the county. We projected it to be down 40% in our FY21 budget. Our first month of activity, it was down 66%. And so it's not like the picture is getting better.
Right.
And so that's really the challenges that we have. And of course, the offset to this is knowing the cuts that we've made through attrition, knowing the other operational expenditure cuts that we've made, even cuts to capital in some cases. There's no proverbial meat left on the bone. And so now it's a question of, do we cut programs and services? What programs and services are those? We're talking $4.6 million of programs and services that we have to come up with, assuming revenues stay where we're at today.
And we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. You bet.
Which I appreciate. And you have brought with you some numbers, some graphics. I know how you love your charts and graphs, Mike Stark.
Yes.
And so we'll show those too and share those with the audience who are watching us, because I think that helps kind of put into perspective a little bit about what the things that you're talking about. Commissioner Crowley, I want to ask you a little bit too. And again, it's never easy for an elected official to maybe talk about raising taxes or to even have that on the table. But this is where we are, and this is where Mike Stark and his folks have come to the commission to ask you to consider this.
From a commissioner's standpoint, we've been watching, and at least in my 4-year tenure, there are diminishing GRT taxes coming in, and so what have we had to do? So we have not just 1 year decided we have to do something.
Right.
We have been doing it year by year. That's why over the last 5 years, we're looking at 76-ish people that we have had who've moved on or retired.
Weren't replaced.
And they were not replaced.
Because of this budget issue.
Yes. And so what we're looking at is the diminishing amounts. And so we have shuffled some things. We have taken some money from the HCAP fund, health care
HCAP.
Assistance program.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to get the rest of it out.
Right, those acronyms.
That we can divert because the legislature recently de-earmarked most taxes, and so some can be
Shuffled around a different bucket, maybe,
yes.
than what you're talking about. Sure.
So it can go to a general fund, and we can help supply that. We have held a healthy balance with in reserves. We've kept some capital reserve money in there for capital expenditures. We took bond money that was from bonds in 2015, and we were able to apply that bond money to capital expenditures that we had done to shuffle that back in, so that that money sitting in bond reserves got used for the capital of what we did, and then we were able to just free that money up to get it back into the general fund. And so it's not like we haven't done things. We've been doing things all along. And we're not just in a one-year budget process. It's really more than one. It's 2 years and kind of 5 years out, because we have a large organization to deal with. We have we have 120 something buildings.
Sure. Right.
You think about, it's easy for one building to cost $250,000 to fix a roof, and if a roof is 20 years, you have to do something every year. And we have other capital things that we have to deal with, but we have services that the county provides. Most people don't really understand what they are, and so we have mandatory services. We also have services that are less mandatory, but
Right.
we kind of have to have
Nice to
them.
have. That's right.
Yes.
And we'll talk about those too this morning. So I want to at least start talking about some of these graphs that you sent over. And this is the gross receipts taxes that I think Mike Stark was talking about a little bit. So this kind of gives us a little historical look at where we were coming from and how things are looking this year. And so we just have 1 month. Is that what I'm looking at? Am I correct in that? For this year?
Yes, you just have 1 month
Of
so
July,
far.
that
Yeah.
little bar that we can see, it's already kind of lower than the rest of it almost, except for the budget line, which is kind of that pink
pinkish
line
line.
at the very bottom, that FY21 budget line, right?
Yep,
And that's what
correct.
you're projecting for this year.
Correct.
So
And I think the next chart that you have, I think, would be good to show, because it actually shows.
these are numbers.
Now it puts it in perspective in terms of total dollars. So
Right.
the line graph is great, but what does that mean in terms of what this financial impact means? So going back just a few years, FY16 actual collected dollars, gross receipts tax dollars, we brought in $42 million in gross receipts tax, which helps to fund the local county government. But look at where we're projecting the budget to be for this fiscal year based upon the 16% reduction that we anticipate will stay. We hope it doesn't. We hope we see
Sure.
dramatic improvement, but
Right.
the reality is we can't budget and provide services on a hope and a prayer. But $30 million, we're talking $12 million less in revenue
in about 5 years.
in 5 years. And so, to Commissioner Crowley's point, we've been actively managing this through time, but the scales tipped come March 1st, really 2 months after March 1st, when we
Right.
actually see the report from the
Right.
state the 17th of every month.
And that one county employee who's making $5 million a year, is he ready to retire yet? Can you get him off the books?
Yes, we can get that one person off the payroll.
Sorry. I know that's making light of this very serious topic, but that's where we find ourselves, and that's for the county government. That's where you find yourselves and what you've been talking about. And so, explain this chart to me a little bit too. Then, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so this really goes to show the economic activity and the major corporate losses that we've had here in the area, and of course, it doesn't really hit you into the face. You hear about ConocoPhillips leaving, XTO leaving, Williams leaving, BHP leaving,
Right.
And it kind of happened over time, right? And so, unless you were one of those families that lost a job potentially, you don't really think about the impact. Well, this really puts it in light. Comparing 2010 to 2019, the top 10 taxpayers in San Juan County. Look at the difference.
This is property tax.
This is property tax, which is another form of revenue for the county.
Right.
But look at the difference in the top 10. Total assessed value of $2.2 billion. They represented those large companies I just mentioned, 47% of the total tax base.
Right.
In the county, and now we're down to still appreciative of the companies that are here and providing those great jobs and providing those tax revenues, but they're down significantly, and that's the loss of economic activity over time that we've been financially managing. But this really puts it into light. And then you think about the jobs that have been lost, the tax revenues, which this chart obviously shows, the charitable contributions. I know you serve obviously in your capacity as the board, still a board president for United Way?
Not past president, but
past president,
on the board of United Way, sure.
Yeah,
San Juan County, and we've seen that at the United Way.
Was it just 5 years ago that we had a $3 million campaign?
Right.
And now it's less than $1 million.
Correct.
In just 5 short years.
Right.
And that shows the impact of these large major employers leaving our area.
And some folks may say, Mike Stark and Commissioner Crowley, that maybe, but we thought that when these bigger companies maybe moved out, we had other companies move in, like Hillcorp and things like that, so why aren't they taking up the slack maybe of some of this money? But it's at least in my opinion that, and thinking, that Hillcorp is not filling up as many office buildings and other things that maybe ConocoPhillips was when they were here. They've divested a lot of that property, and that's why these numbers are lower. Is that an accurate statement?
Partially, but
Okay.
Hillcorp has
This
a
is why I'm a broadcaster, not a politician or a government person.
So
or a budget
Hillcorp has a
person.
different model here, which
see.
is they provide matching funds to their employees, so the employee can decide where it goes.
That's their philanthropic program, right?
Yes.
Understand that. But even from these property taxes, right? I mean, Hillcorp, we know they don't have a building on 30th Street anymore because the college and school district has it. So they've divested in some of those properties
Correct.
that they had, and that's why these numbers are lower, along with other reasons.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect synopsis of what's taken place. And Hillcorp had to come in, given the decline in natural gas prices. They bought an asset that requires them to be leaner and meaner. And so they're doing that to be able to squeeze a profit from a field that pricing is it's very tight.
Right.
And so, all of those things and that contraction that's taken place, and that's really what the challenge has been, is the economic contraction, coupled with the fact that we provided a very robust menu of services, still do today, but they were pre-contraction days. And so we set the expectation for citizens that here are the services we're going to provide all the time. A great example of that is our transfer stations located in the county. Prior to 2011, you could dump at no charge at one of our 11 transfer stations located throughout the county. Well, that scenario changed as we started to see the loss of economic activity from these large players. The only way to make up that gap was to start charging a nominal fee to dump at our transfer stations. And of course, there's been a few modifications made since then as well, including the landfill. But those are all modifications that we had to make because we were seeing a contraction and who was paying the bill. And really, who was paying the bill before?
Right.
Through tax revenues were the large major corporations that were in our area, and the employees that worked there as well. When we start to see the job loss and we start to see the sale of assets and companies coming in and still maintaining those assets but doing it at a lot lower level, it's affected the economy as a whole.
Right. And so let's look at this chart, too, that you sent over as well. I wanted to ask you a bit about this. And so the chart in the middle is the final budget for the county. Is that what we're looking at?
Correct. Yeah,
Correct.
That's showing final budgets through time.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, of course, so 45% of your total budget is allocated to public safety. So that would be Sheriff's Department, fire departments in the county.
Fire, emergency management, our detention centers that we operate.
Call center.
Call centers. So
Okay.
that's a large component. I think it's important for folks to know that's where the majority of their dollars are going, is public safety. And we're a service organization. The next item down below that is that 76% of our general fund budget is wages and benefits. So when we look at, we don't want to look at a gross receipts tax increase, potentially could be the sediment. Let's just get rid of programs and services. So that's fine. So first off, what programs and services do you no longer need and want? Mm-hmm. That will be a tough question because there's a lot of things that folks don't realize are being provided by their local government. If we no longer were spraying for mosquitoes, you no longer were able to use McGee Park for rodeos and other events. You can go down the list of all the different services, and Commissioner Crowley will hit on this later.
Right.
That we have a very robust menu that a lot of folks don't realize how that impacts them. But at the end of the day, services and programs mean jobs too. And so what we'd have to do ultimately is we're talking about a forced layoff. We've been able to do it through attrition to date.
Right.
But to cover this size of a gap, we're talking about laying off 70 employees along with the cuts to services and programs.
Got you. And of course, we're seeing 77 jobs eliminated by attrition since 2010, but 27 of those are just since this past March.
Correct.
Is what this is showing us as we move forward a little bit. So the county services, as you've talked a little bit about, right, some of these things are mandated by the state, Commissioner Crowley. Isn't that where this comes from?
This is correct. So we do have the commission, the assessor, the treasurer, the clerk, the Bureau of Elections, the treasurer, a probate judge, the sheriff's office, and so those are mandated things that we have to provide.
Right. But now, it doesn't tell you how many deputies you need to have in the sheriff's office necessarily, correct? That comes from your sheriff.
That's correct. The sheriff does, in his budget, come and say, this is what we need.
Right.
And to cover as many square miles as we have to cover, and as many, and the divisions they have in the sheriff department. You know, it's not just patrol. They have investigation, and they have people who actually monitor the internet stuff. They have to move prisoners around who are, well, they're not called prisoners anymore, but
Detainees.
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 Okay, right.
Thank you. Boy, I guess I'm old school.
That's all right, but we understand what you're saying.
So, yes.
But those are some of the jobs they have to do, just in a matter of course, of performing their duties, right? And,
That's correct.
And moving these detainees in and out of court, or if they got to get transferred to a different facility, all this stuff you're talking
We've
about.
even done a budget cut with regard to those personnel by providing cameras, so that we are using a lot of video arraignment stuff
Right.
now, more than we've ever done before. Kind of set the stage for the state, and the state is liking it, and the courts are liking it too.
Gotcha. So this is part of the things that the county provides to the community. The other things is on this page that we want to talk a little bit too about human services and information systems. That's your computer stuff and all these other things that kind of are adding up. The purchasing, legal department, parks and facilities at $3.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's Miggy Park that you're talking about, and others in the county, right?
Yeah, well, and that doesn't include all of our parks. The primary component in that is the maintenance of our 120 buildings that Commissioner Crowley alluded to earlier.
I see, right.
But no doubt, parks includes McGee Park and Riverview Golf Course, and you know those are venues that are enjoyed by a lot of citizens, and they do require a subsidy. But you know, even if we were to just eliminate those two operations, we're talking about eliminating a subsidy of $600,000 a year for McGee Park and roughly $400,000 a year for Riverview Golf Course. So when you look at, okay, well, let's just eliminate those two, you solved your budget crisis.
No.
That's not accurate. We're a third of the way there,
Right.
but that's not going to cover it in full. And
That
so,
won't do it.
you know, that's the dilemma, is that now we've got to go through the list, and we've done this. We were one of the first local governments in the state to institute priority-based budgeting. It's a unique format that allows us to take the normal line item budget and turn it into programs and services, and then really identify what are those priority programs and services. And a big function, as the previous slide showed, is it mandated by the state or not? And we've actually made cuts to some of those
Right.
services. We used to provide through the solid waste department, you know, a community work program that actually was the responsibility of state courts. But we had manpower back in prior to 2008. We administered that program and did that on behalf of the courts. Well, there's an example of a program that we turned back over to the courts, and we were able then, through attrition, to eliminate a position.
I see.
And so those are the
Right.
types of things that our GIS department. We used to at one time have 3 full-time employees and an intern in our Geographic Information Systems department. Today we have 1 individual managing the entire department and the operation. So
Interesting.
it's those types of cuts that we've made through time, still maintaining services and programs, not seeing some of these services a lot of folks depend on eliminated, but we're at a point now we've got to take a different approach. If citizens don't see the value, and I know we'll talk about the tax increase and what
proposal,
that really
that's right.
equates to for the average citizen.
Right. And I wanted to ask, too, that I would assume technology has helped maybe with some of these attrition jobs that maybe no longer need as many people in these departments because of technology or other things that have been available, and so that's been a necessary thing, and you've been able to maybe have someone retire and not have to replace them because of technology. Is that true, what you're using?
We've actually reduced the staffing in our information systems department because we've prudently, back in 2015, started moving towards web-based systems. Specifically our ERP system, our Enterprise Resource Planning System, which is really the financial and HR purchasing system for the county. We replaced that back in 2015. We moved to Microsoft, to the web-based version of Microsoft Office. And what we're doing is we're essentially eliminating on-site servers and going to the cloud and putting,
like everybody,
putting software and security in the hands of larger corporations, and then we were able to reduce our workforce accordingly. And so that has helped as well, our investment in technology.
Right. I want to ask you a bit, you go back to like McGee Park and maybe Riverview Golf Course that you talked about, Mike Stark, and what if you just eliminated the subsidy for those things? Would that mean a round of golf cost me $150? I mean, is that what we would be talking about if the county didn't subsidize some of these things, or renting out McGee Park, or riding my horse down there would cost me $75 an hour? I don't know.
Correct. Yeah, we would have to, if the decision was to maintain those operations.
Yes, right. And I know I'm being speculative.
I know. Appreciate that.
Okay.
But yes, we would have to raise the rates commensurate with covering the cost of the operation, or completely eliminate the operation. Today we provide free riding for folks at McGee Park.
Yeah.
Provide free youth events. That's 4-H on down. Those. If you have kids, you find those to be extremely valuable services, and like the fact that they're being provided at nominal charge or no cost at all.
Sure.
And so those are the types of programs that you're talking about when we're looking at, okay, well, what do we eliminate? Because there's a pretty long list of mandated services, along with those that we have to provide through joint powers agreements.
Right. I want to show that too to our listeners and viewers this morning about what we're talking about. So these items in red are kind of set by this joint powers agreement, that JPA that you're talking about, with different entities, right? It's not the same ones necessarily, but all the things on the screen here in red are what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And the price that goes along with it, I suppose, right, that the county has to pay for.
Correct. Yeah, we're showing you in all these figures here, we're showing you the FY 21, so the current fiscal year budget that runs July 1st to June 30th, of what it takes to operate these operations. And it's not cheap. Look at corrections being the top one. That's to run the adult detention center, and it's a $16 million a year operation. I guess the alternative, if we were to unwind, we provide those services to our municipalities today. Once again, a way that we've been able to partner to reduce resources, reduce costs countywide, similar to what we just entered into with Bloomfield Fire. We see the mutual benefit there of us combining resources and forces to save the taxpayers money. But
this is why there's no more Farmington City Jail, for example, because
correct.
The city of Farmington contracts with the county, and their detainees are taken over to the county detention center.
That's right. And they reimburse us, and it's a per diem rate.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think it's $86 per detainee per day. But by no means does that cover the entire cost of the operation. As you can imagine, there's some pretty large fixed costs that go with running a 24/7, basically a 24/7 small city. We're responsible for the care and custody of those detainees when they enter our facility. It's our largest potential source of litigation, and so we've got to make sure we do it right, and we make sure that we maintain the health and well-being of our detainees when they're there. And so the largest contracts that we have are for medical services, for food provisions while folks are there, commissary, and those are all things that we do to maintain that facility. And actually, we do it for far less than neighboring counties. Bernalillo County, that number's 5 times as high. And so we know that when we look at, are we doing this within best practices in terms of how to operate the facility and financial management of it, in priority-based budgeting really showed that, we're providing a great value to the taxpayers, but it's still expensive.
Sure.
It can't be eliminated because of the JPAs that we have.
Right. The other thing I wanted to point out is the Communications Authority. Again, another great example, I think, of all entities working together, which is why, again, we don't have a Farmington Police Dispatch Center. We don't have a Bloomfield PD Dispatch Center. They're all consolidated into one, and so all the entities are able to be dispatched out of one central place, and that does save some, I guess, repetition of services, why having it all done in one place, right?
Absolutely. We have to have this, and the requirements for up-to-date equipment and the changing environment of a 911 call center is that now we're moving toward, if you call and because something has happened, we can pinpoint you by GPS by your cell phone.
Right.
And
right.
And
if
that,
I can't tell you where I am,
yes.
you can see where I am, perhaps, with the technology.
At some level, yes. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't been the case, and that takes time because that's expensive equipment. But it becomes mandatory at some place to keep ISO ratings. We look at that with fire, and with the Sheriff's Department, we have an unfunded mandate requiring lapel cameras that happened recently.
That's recent, that's right. And ISO, you're talking about maybe insurance,
this is
ratings and things like that. So I pay maybe less in my homeowner's insurance if I'm in a certain part of the county,
yes,
because of some of these things that we're talking about. And I guess if we didn't have the consolidated dispatch center, then every city and entity had to do their own. Then maybe I, as a resident of the city of Farmington, might have to pay more for that service than I would with having it at the county and countywide. So I pay it no matter what. Is my point.
Yes.
Okay, I said it. You guys don't have to, but I did. All right. So let's talk. We just have a few minutes remaining this morning, and we need to really talk about what the proposal is, gentlemen, because, again, this is coming before the County Commission next Tuesday. And so, Mike Stark, what are you asking them to approve?
Can we back up before that?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
As a commissioner,
yes, sir.
The commission has seen this drop in revenues.
Right.
And so we instructed our manager to show us the options.
Okay.
And among the options could be general obligation bonds. We don't want to do that.
That's funding it further out, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's capital only. Mm-hmm. The second one is an increase in property taxes. We don't want to do that one. The third one that we're looking at is this third of the three available 1/8 of 1% general gross receipts tax, and this amount can be passed by the commission without voter approval. And so there are three increments. We are one of very few that haven't done all three.
Right.
And so that's
well, this
an
would be
option.
the third one.
This would be the third one
that
the commission is allowed by law to pass, and so it's spelled out there. So
right.
It's
okay.
we've
given
option. Him direction. He's come back with these are your options,
gotcha.
And so before we as a commission really can start discussing it, it has to be introduced as an intent to adopt. So it's on the table. That means intent to adopt. Now we can discuss. Then there's a public hearing, and then the commission will vote.
I see.
It's important that we as commissioners hear from the constituents. To this date, I have only heard from one side, which is no. 100% no.
100%.
100%
have called you or emailed you or
yes.
stopped you in the street,
yes.
6 feet apart, and said, "Don't do it." Okay, so so this would amount to how much? 1/8 of 1%. Help me do the math.
3.4 million.
Okay, that would fill your hole at the moment, right? In your budget, Mike Stark. And so, but what does that mean for me as I'm spending money in the county then?
It's a nickel on $40. So you spend $40. Anyone in the county. So anybody who comes into the county and spends $40, it's going to be an extra nickel.
And this is why I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the commission maybe likes this proposal better maybe as an option than a property tax increase, because that would fall on the residents of San Juan County. Gross receipts tax is shared among, as you say, everyone who comes into the county to shop. And so it's residents plus visitors.
Yes, it's shared among the consumer.
Right.
And it is more economic development friendly.
Got it. And so, Mike Stark, again, with this option to the county commission, you'll do whatever the commission says to do, right? That's what the county government will do.
You bet. That's my job. And so if this is decided that this isn't the appropriate way to move forward with raising revenues, and we need to look at cutting programs and services and ultimately jobs, then I would bring forth to the commission a list of potential services and programs that we could look to cut. And more than likely, it'd have to be eliminate, because at the end of the day, we have to eliminate jobs, since 76% of our total budget is wages and benefits. And so And that's my job, and I can stand to do that. But I think when the consumer realizes, where do we fall with gross receipts tax relative to the rest of the state? Out of 33 counties, we're in the middle of the pack. For county gross receipts taxes, and of course, GRT is stacked. There's the state piece for 5.125%. They get the lion's share of it. The municipal piece, which ends up being larger than the county, and then ours is 1.0625% today. So we'd be adding 0.125% to that, and that equates to, as Commissioner Crowley indicated, 2.5 cents. 5 cents on a $40 purchase.
Right.
And based on $25,000 of annual GRT applicable goods and services, because not everything is taxed with gross receipts tax. It's
right.
37% actually of the total household sales a year are taxed with gross receipts tax. A lot of things are exempted. That amounts to $2.60 per month. So that's what we're talking about when it equates to what does it mean to keep programs and services that we offer, the wide umbrella of services. We're talking about an impact of $2.60 a month to the average household in San Juan County.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know, I think, for folks who are listening and watching this morning, of how it may impact their budgets, because we realize, I realize it too, that it would impact my budget and folks who are on fixed incomes and things like that. Certainly this is a concern for these folks, and I definitely understand that. Commissioner Crowley, is there a chance that maybe there'd be a sunset on this when it comes before the commission, that maybe you pass it for a year or 2 years and then seeing how things go? We all hope for better times and economic recovery and things like that in the oil fields and the gas fields and who knows where else, but is that something maybe the commission would consider, a sunset?
I would hope that the other commissioners would consider that. That would be one of the things I would look at, because one of the really strong concerns that people have is you tax me and it never goes away. So if you do a sunset, then maybe it's a one-year fix. But if we don't do it now, and let's say that the new sitting commission, of which there'll be 2 new members, will come in and they'll say, well, we're gonna do this, and if they move forward with it, it's a year from now before there's any money that comes in. And so because you've got 2 windows of January 1st and July 1st for that to start coming in 2 months afterwards.
Right. So this is why we're talking about it now.
Yes.
Even though this is an issue not for this year's budget, but 2022's fiscal year is what we're talking about.
And the trend is already there. It's less than what we've already projected. The first month was 100,000 down in
right.
basically, and we hit this last year with and I was an advocate of some reserves last year that we put in capital reserve, $1 million from PILT money, and we put it in there. In the first 3 months, we wiped it all out.
That's federal money, payment in lieu of taxes, is what
Yes.
the county gets sometimes because of its federal land in the county.
Yes, it's land that can't produce any gross receipts.
Got it. Well, it's a complicated issue, but I think we've covered it pretty well this morning. But there's certainly always more to talk about, gentlemen. But I appreciate you both coming in and sharing these numbers with us. And again, I know if folks have more information, Mike Stark, are these graphs and charts on the county website somewhere? If folks really want to dig into them and look at these numbers?
They are. So yeah, if you go to our homepage, you would see a page dedicated to this specific issue and the presentation. You showed a couple of the slides. There's roughly 20 slides that go a little more in depth. And in addition to the presentation I gave to the commission when we put forth the notice of intent to adopt, as well as other charts and graphs, because I like charts and graphs.
I know you do,
so.
and you're an overachiever. You had a lot more than I was able to show, but I appreciate it. So there you go. Commissioner Crowley, again.
San Juan County website is sjcounty.net.
True.
And
right.
all 5 of us as commissioners have an email there, and you can call the county if you want to call us and talk to us personally. We're available, open, glad to take your call.
And you want to hear from your constituents as
I
to
do.
what they feel about this issue. And then the vote next Tuesday is to move this then to the next step. Is that the idea?
It would be approved or not.
I see. So that's what we're talking about.
That's
so
right.
That's coming up. Well, very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Jim Crowley, I want to thank you for your service on the County Commission. You've been here numerous times to talk about your work with the Commission, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mike Stark, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming in.
Good to see you, Scott.
All right, good to see both of you. Mike Stark and Commissioner Jim Crowley from San Juan County, my guests here on KSJE. Back with more in just a moment, everybody. The time is 8:49. Hi, I'm Scott Micklin. As a longtime resident and